Now we're live.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is take 3 of us coming live on Facebook this morning inside this group. We are happy to have you join us if you're there. If you're watching on the replay, let us know. Donc, ce matin, c'est la troisième fois qu'on essaie de venir vous présenter ceci. On a eu quelques difficultés ce matin, mais on a réussi, on est ici. Donc, bienvenue si vous êtes là. Si vous nous regardez plus tard, il n'y a pas de problème. Laissez-nous savoir si vous êtes là. If you're there this morning, give us a little hello. So I'd like to introduce myself for those of you who do not know me. I am Brandi Bloomquist, and I am the regional coordinator for the North, and that includes Restigouche region, Chateau region, and Edmonton Grand Falls. And I'm joined this morning by Suzanne. Good morning, Suzanne.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Pretty good.
So I'll just quickly introduce myself. If people don't already know me, I'm Suzanne Kingston. I'm the executive director of the New Brunswick Adoption Foundation, and I'm subbing in this morning for Kim, who's our staff, who is going to be hosting this with Brandi this morning. But in the spirit of self-care and balancing life and kids and life and work and all that, something came up, and so I'm really happy to step in, and I really love this topic, and I love having Brandi lead us through this because, you know, for those who've been part of our network, I think, you know, they would know Brandi as somebody who's really helped us navigate through how we handle our self-care and how we, you know, make sure we're healthy so that our whole families are healthy. And yeah, so
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Suzanne. Donc, c'est ça, ce matin, on vient en direct pour vous présenter un webinaire qu'on a trouvé parce qu'on a réalisé qu'il y a tellement de bonnes ressources qui est là pour vous. Puis on a trouvé quelque chose qui était quand même vraiment lié à prendre soin de soi pour les parents. Donc, on va passer à travers la vidéo ensemble. Ensuite, on va avoir une discussion entre Suzanne et moi et puis répondre à des questions par rapport à comment intégrer, vraiment intégrer la partie de prendre soin de soi dans les situations qu'on est en train de vivre comme parents adoptifs en ce moment ou parents qui sont en train d'attendre pour adopter parce que c'est important pour eux autres aussi de prendre soin de soi. So this morning we want to present a video that we found because we realized there's so many good resources out there, and we found this video we're going to present to you for 20 minutes, and after the video we are going to have a Q&A or a discussion around how it fits in to our lives around adoption and in what we are currently living as adoptive parents or parents that are waiting to adopt. So the topic, of course, is self-care. It's parental self-care. And we found this video was very easy to digest, and it touched every pillar around self-care. So we're going to go through all of that, and then we'll discuss afterwards. So this week we are talking everything self-care because we've realized within our own organization how extremely important and how science shows the direct link between taking care of other people and being regulated or taking care of ourselves as well, and how that allows us to show up as a parent dealing with, you know, kids that have their own challenges. So last week for our awareness month, we've discussed around trauma, and we found that really bringing to light this self-care part of it, especially for parents who live in this overwhelm and this, you know, situations that can be challenging as what we,
And I even think, you know, like it's not only important to look after your self-care, you know, as someone who's caring and loving other people, it's actually the first step. I think it's a fundamental, like if you're not okay, the people you interact with are going to be affected by that. And even if you think you can be okay and you can kind of, you know, create the facade of being okay, ultimately it's about your wellness if you care about your own, all those people in your life who you really care about, that, we're all on a journey, like we're all a different, we're all trying to figure it all out, but working towards being as healthy as we can will have ripple effects with all the people in your life. So it's really fundamental, and it's something I think we all have learned through our own lives, but then also through this work and through our, getting to know families and watching families who, certainly still have, like it's challenging when you're parenting kids with a lot of complexities that they've had through their lives. But we've seen, and Brandi and Kim talked about it this week, and they have some interviews that we'll be posting or have posted around how people making that shift where they've thought about, okay, I need to look after me now, and how that then has impacted their own wellness and being grounded, but then also their children and other people in their lives. So it's really fundamental. It's not just an extra. It's not just, it's a good idea. It's like fundamental.
Absolutely. It's crucial, right? And yes, we posted those interviews yesterday. So there's a French interview and there's an English interview. Be sure to check that out. They are on our website and they are on our fan page, and we've been sharing them around. So be sure to check that. It's all about the benefits of people, who have adopted, who are actually living it and taking care of themselves. And like Suzanne mentioned, really made that shift into discovering how their own well-being does impact the whole rest of the family, right? Donc, ce que Suzanne disait aussi, c'est fondamental, c'est crucial, c'est vraiment quelque chose qu'on réalise qui est tellement important. Puis il y a vraiment une relation entre prendre soin de soi, puis comment est-ce qu'on va prendre soin des autres dans notre famille, puis comment est-ce que vraiment que c'est ça, c'est fondamental, c'est quasiment numéro 1, c'est vraiment le fait de pouvoir vraiment se sentir bien. Puis une fois qu'on se sent bien, on va être capable de vraiment être là pour naviguer les temps les plus difficiles ou les challenges qui surmontent dans nos vies. Puis comme qu'elle disait, avec nos participants, on a vraiment réalisé qu'il y a un shift qui se fait, puis le plus qu'on peut mettre l'emphase sur prendre soin de soi, puis le normaliser, le plus qu'on a des relations plus saines et en santé. All right, so we are going to jump in. So like I mentioned, we are watching, well, I don't know if I mentioned it, but we're watching a video or a webinar from a clinical psychologist from the Children's Hospital of New York, and she's going to guide us through the pillars of self-care. So we're going to watch that. It's a 20-minute. We're going to watch that together, and then we are going to have a little chat afterwards. Donc, c'est un vidéo de 20 minutes. C'est d'une psychologue à l'hôpital des enfants de New York, puis on vous présente ça. So here we go.
Another technical challenge.
Yes, here we go.
It'll happen.
All right, I think we got it. So we're going to go to share, and I'm going to share my screen with you here. And we are going. The video is in English, but we are going to, if you like, you can put subtitles on it and have it in French. Is it a-okay, Suzanne?
Yeah, if you put, from your end, click on subtitle. There we go, perfect.
It's all good?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Everyone, or good afternoon, I guess it's lunchtime. My name is Samantha Busa. I'm one of the clinical psychology postdoctoral fellows here at the NYU Child Study Center. I work primarily on our anxiety and mood service and also work on our gender and sexuality service. Today, I'm going to be talking to you all about parental self-care and how to take time to recharge. So the first point I want to make is if you have been on a trip recently or been on an airplane recently or have ever been on an airplane in your lifetime, you've probably heard sort of the safety directions in the beginning. And what the flight attendants typically stress is this idea that if something were to happen and the masks were to come down from the airplane, you're supposed to take care of yourself first before you take care of any child near you. And so this idea is that taking care of yourself is not a selfish act. It's more so to say that we can't take care of others if we're not adequately taking care of ourselves. And so today's sort of presentation is really to help parents tune into why taking care of themselves is just so important. So first, I want to talk about what self-care is. We throw this term out a lot, and also talk about why we're so bad at it. This is the idea. So self-care is the idea of identifying your own needs and making steps to meet them, or taking steps to make yourself feel like you are caring for yourself. There are a lot of themes of self-care. So this could be physical, psychological self-care, spiritual self-care, intellectual self-care. And we're going to talk about all of these a little bit later today. But again, this is the idea of taking care of yourself as you would take care of others. I think we're all much better of, taking care of our friends, family members, kids than we are of ourselves. We're much harder on ourselves than we are on others. And it may feel counterintuitive to maintaining your day-to-day, but the idea is that really being mindful of taking care of yourself. We also know that there are a lot of benefits of self-care, and this idea of engaging in self-care can actually decrease stress, can make you feel more positive about your day-to-day life, and help you feel more confident. In terms of parental stress specifically, if you are a parent, stress is really, really common. It's not something that, I would be surprised to hear any parent coming into my office. I would actually be more surprised to hear a parent saying, oh, I'm not stressed at all. And stress can come from anywhere. It can come from economic hardship. It can come from marital conflict. It can come from, conflict in your social circles, insufficient support systems, teachers, so stress, related to the teachers at your child's school. And it can lead to a couple of different outcomes. So it could lead to parental mental health issues like depression or anxiety, more marital conflict, less effective parenting strategies, child behavior problems, and poor physical health. And so this is to say that parental stress is important to be mindful of, because the more stressed you are, the more negative outcomes can actually happen. And I want you guys to think about, when you're feeling stressed, how well do you function? Do you, are you feeling good about the things that you're doing on a day-to-day? When you're more stressed, are you more productive? For some people, yes, but there is this level of stress that does become, detrimental in some ways. We know that self-care can help decrease stress in general, and so I want to talk a little bit first about some of the benefits of self-care itself. So this is the idea that engaging in wellness activities can actually promote resilience. And what that means is that by decreasing your stress, you're actually more likely to be able to bounce back quicker from stressful events in your life. So that could be from, if you have a bad day at work, being able to sort of bounce back and come home and be more mindful and be less stressed in that moment. We also know that having more positive emotions can increase the perceptions of someone's life satisfaction. So just being able to say, I feel good about my life and the things that I'm doing, even though I'm feeling super stressed about everything that's going on. It can broaden our attention and our thinking, so it can actually help us focus better in our work. So again, decreasing stress can actually help you perform better, do things more efficiently, and help you feel like you can cope more with situations. In addition, wellness is also associated a lot with mindfulness, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But practicing mindfulness can also decrease anxiety, decrease depression, decrease judgments of the self, improve self-management, and improve emotion regulation. So all of this is to say that taking care of yourself can actually make you sort of a more complete person in general. And I think it's so important to remember that, because I think when we are kind of faced with, do I take care of myself? Do I take care of someone else? We always are choosing somebody else. So taking care of yourself is really important. So for parents who have children with mental health issues and disabilities, this is especially important. There is evidence and a couple of studies that have been done that show that parents who have children with disabilities and mental health issues are at greater risk for having stress and greater risk for having, high levels of stress that get in the way of their parenting. And what we also know is that there is some research that says that high levels of parenting stress can actually lead to less progress in developmental goals for their child. So this idea that what you do and how you parent, the amount of stress that you have actually impacts how your child is developing and how they're making progress. And this does not change based on age. So this can be from infancy until young adulthood. Kids are really perceptive. They pick up when their parents are stressed, and they they don't know how to help you. And so really what you have to do is be mindful of that and be able to take care of yourself. Of course, parenting is a really stressful job. And having a child with a disability is especially stressful because you're managing appointments, trying to figure things out with the teachers. And sometimes, you feel like, you're being asked to act like a superhero, but don't have sort of a Superman cape to do that. And so being mindful of stress and being aware of the impact that it has on your child can really actually help take that first step to decrease your own stress. We also know that, parent stress can put families at risk for child behavior problems. And so being able to intervene yourself, and I'm going to give some tips on self-care, can actually help you help your child in the best way possible. So just to sort of summarize here, parental self-care is super important. Parents are stressed. And when we aren't engaging in self-care, we're actually modeling for our kids. And modeling is this idea that, kids watch what we do. They're super perceptive. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're saying that taking care of our bodies and, overextending ourselves is actually something that we should be doing rather than something that we wouldn't recommend. And if we're not engaging in self-care, we might be more irritable, more exhausted, more sad. I'm sure everyone on this webinar can think of a time where, everything went wrong during the day, and then going home to have to parent going home to parent or picking your child up from school feeling like, oh my goodness, I have so much to do, and just feeling exhausted in general can lead to just lower energy, lower optimism. And what I like to tell parents to think about is, when you're hiring a babysitter or a nanny or someone to help out at home, or even, thinking of a family member to help out, do we want someone who's going to be irritable, exhausted, or sad, or do we want someone who's going to be cheerful and happy and energetic? I think most people would answer that, yes, I want an energetic person who's going to be engaged. And so helping yourself take care to be more happy and more energetic by practicing some of these self-care tips can actually lead to you being a parent that, you feel proud of on a day-to-day basis. And we all have bad days, but just remembering that self-care is so important. So how do we do this? I'm going to talk about a number of different types of self-care today. So physical self-care, social and emotional self-care, intellectual self-care, and spiritual self-care. And we think of these as sort of comprehensive. We want to help someone reach life balance when we're recommending self-care. As someone who's a therapist myself, taking care of myself is also important too. And so we think about self-care as just being important for everyone. They teach classes on how to do your own self-care as therapists, and I think we need to do a better job of helping parents, make that time for self-care. So in terms of physical needs, these may seem really obvious, but this idea of finding time to exercise, making sure that you're having balanced sleep, getting that 8 to 10 hours is so important. And we know that that's not always possible, but finding ways to be sure that you're getting as much sleep as you need. Exercising, you can exercise on your own, but if, you have small children and want to sort of go to the park with your kids and exercise in that way, that's also great too. It doesn't need to be sort of taking time away from your family, but making sure that you're making time for yourself. Balancing your eating, even if it's making just a small change to cut out, processed sugars or whatever it is that you want to try that week to help yourself feel like you're doing things in a more balanced way. Physical affection is actually shown to really release chemicals in our brain that make us feel good. So hugging your child, hugging your partner, hugging and, being affectionate with the ones that you love in your life. Even taking a hot shower or a bath. I know that, parents always say, there's not enough time to do everything in the day, and I'm the last person that's going to get a shower, but making sure that you are able to do that and make it an enjoyable experience. Even if you want to make your cup of tea or coffee in the morning, that experience as well. I know for myself, I love to just sort of sometimes go out in a day that's especially stressful and get a cup of coffee and enjoy that cup of coffee. Trying not to multitask while you're drinking it, being able to take the time to, just enjoy it and enjoy the sensation of having it. Another way is, going for a long walk outdoors. So these are some examples of how to take care of some of those physical needs. And again, just remembering that anything that you do, being able to label it as something that you're doing for yourself can even just increase your feelings of taking care of yourself. We also want to make time for our social supports. I think this is incredibly important because social support actually decreases stress. So it actually changes the relationship between stress and parenting. So having someone who you can confide in, someone that you can talk about your stresses with, is associated with lower levels of parental stress. And this is incredibly hard to do if you're working or even if you're at home. Being able to find time that's mutually beneficial for you and your friend or someone else in your life. Spending time with friends is incredibly important, and there are a lot of ways to do that. So it's possible that if your child has a friend who also has parents that you get along with, making sure that you're, setting up those play dates where maybe both of the parents are there and able to spend time with each other to kind of reminisce about being parents and some of the stresses. And it's also important to find ways to spend time alone. I think we take for granted those alone times and being in a space that we're able to do whatever it is that we want to do without the stresses of having anyone else around. In addition, we want people to be able to take care of their intellectual needs as well. I think sometimes, parents will say, I just don't have time to do the things that I used to love. And so there are a number of ways to meet some of those intellectual needs, so related to your interests and related to sort of stimulating your brain. So some suggestions that we have here are, taking your child to the library. This is something that, many, many families do. But the next time you're there, instead of only looking at some of the kids' books, taking your kids over to the adult section or the fiction section, or leaving them in the child section if you're comfortable, and finding yourself something to read, finding something that you're interested in, and making the time to do that. One of the big things that a lot of families are using are podcasts. So, there are so many podcasts that are free, available on the internet or through your phone, and listening to that while you're commuting, doing work around the house, or even if you're able to multitask, using that as another way to meet some of those needs. Even if it's, listening to something new, something that you've never, learned about before. There are a lot of really unique and interesting podcasts that are available online. Another thing is watching documentaries. So depending on whether you have cable or even if you have Netflix, there are a lot of documentaries that are educational in nature or intellectually stimulating. So finding those things that are important to you and making sure that you're making time during the course of the week to engage in that or watch those things. It could also be identifying a project that could be challenging, and that could be something that you're already doing at work, but putting more effort into it, or saying, this is something I need to do for myself, if it's something that you're interested in, or doing it outside. So maybe volunteering for an organization that you've never done something for, being able to get involved in something that you've always wanted to do. There are lots of apps on our phones. The digital age is here, so there are lots of new apps. A lot of families I've talked to recently are doing foreign language apps, so downloading some of the free apps, engaging with that, and making time to do that for yourself every single day. I also recommend that parents will return to old hobbies or take up new ones. So even if it's something that you were doing before you had kids, finding a way to incorporate that into your day-to-day life. Just because you have kids in your life and they take up a ton of time does not mean you have to give up the things that are so important to you. Some parents really love to engage in art, something that they had done when they were younger, making time for that in your day-to-day life, or even writing. So journaling is a huge thing that can help decrease stress, being able to manage all of that. In terms of spiritual needs, I'm going to talk more specifically about mindfulness, but I think that for many people, religion is a huge part of their life, and just finding time to do that for yourself if you're not already doing that. And that can also be a source of social support as well. So I highly recommend that families that, are religious are able to engage with that. And then community service is something I mentioned under intellectual needs, but also finding time to do that if that's something that you're interested in. When we're thinking about mindfulness, I want to speak briefly, if you're interested more in mindfulness after I'm talking about this, we do have our archived webinars on our Child Study Center website. So Amy DiBernardo did a wonderful webinar on mindful parenting that was from May of 2015. So if you scroll down, there is an archived list of all of our webinars that talks more specifically about mindfulness for parenting. But to talk about it briefly here, mindfulness originates from Buddhism and practice of being present and deliberately aware of what is going on around you. It's the act of being in control of your mind rather than letting your mind be in control of you. So it's really focused on full awareness and control, focusing on one thing at a time. Maybe it's describing what's around you, participating fully in that moment. Say to yourself, I am practicing mindfulness right now, and trying to remain non-judgmental. It's impossible to be mindful 100% of the time, so not judging yourself as if your mind wanders. So some examples of this could be just taking a mindful walk, observing the things that you're walking around. I commute in from Grand Central Station every morning. I walk 10 blocks, and sometimes I'm listening to my headphones, not paying attention to what's going on around me. So what I'll try and do is take my headphones off, try and be mindful, notice the things that I'm seeing, and being present and aware. And it's a much more pleasant walk than sort of the morning commute can be. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls that I hear from parents in terms of self-care and how we overcome them. I think that a lot of the things that I spoke about are ideal, and it's like, okay, if I have the time, of course I would do those things. Of course I want to feel less stressed as a parent. But I think what I want to talk a little bit about is how to combat some of those. One of the most common things that I hear is that it's too expensive, and I hear you. Going to the spa is something that would be wonderful on a day-to-day basis, but it's not really always possible, if at all possible. But some of the things that you can do for free that aren't expensive, that can be sort of self-care oriented, is meditation or practicing breathing. YouTube is a great resource for finding videos and tutorials on how to do these things. And I also think that labeling things as self-care, I keep saying this, is a way to help you feel like you're taking better care of yourself. So, making time for doctor's appointments or balancing your eating or drinking more water, those are all things that we quote unquote should be doing. But being able to say, oh, I'm doing this because I'm taking care of myself, makes it a little more meaningful, makes it, maybe resonate more for you. So I recommend, make that doctor's appointment that you've been neglecting. Drink more water, make an effort to do that, put yourself on a behavior plan, reward yourself for doing that. You can also just listen to music and make that be an activity that helps you feel like you're caring for yourself more, or even organizing things in your home. Like that could be a way to help declutter and also help you feel like you're taking better care of yourself. I think the biggest sort of pushback that I get on self-care is this idea that I don't have time. And I think in an age where we are so connected, sort of through the computer, we're talking to each other through this webinar here, we're so connected to our phones, we're so connected to the outside world. There isn't that thing where, you leave work and work is over for the day. So being able to make time can be incredibly difficult, especially with all of the activities that kids do. As a parent, it's probably so difficult to be able to find a minute of time. So what I recommend people do is start small. Don't make lofty goals of I'm going to spend an hour every single day taking care of myself, because the reality is that's going to be hard. And if you fail at that or you're not able to do that, it doesn't feel good. So making time, spending 1 minute a day, even just to decide what you'll do for yourself that day. I recommend that people do this when they're, getting up in the morning, when they're brushing their teeth, even taking the time while you're brushing your teeth to decide what you can do for yourself. And starting a policy of at least 5 minutes of me time. This can be, while you're doing dishes, listening to a song that makes you feel good. 5 minutes, that's all sort of we want to start with. And if that feels doable, being able to move up and making more time during the course of your day-to-day life. We know that habits take a little bit of time to build in terms of, they take time in terms of building them up, so making them more consistent from your day-to-day life. And so just doing 5 minutes a day over the course of a few weeks, then you might be able to move up in time a little bit more. The other thing that's incredibly important is being able to say no. So this idea of you don't have to say yes to every responsibility that comes up. I know that, many schools have, wonderful PTAs and they want parents to be involved in everything. And just being comfortable saying, I don't need to be involved in every single thing, or being able to say no every once in a while, maybe to prioritize spending time with a friend that you haven't seen, or making time to prioritize, maybe spending, a mindful or self-care time with your kids. So being able to say no is incredibly important. And I think we overextend ourselves because we want to do everything, but remembering that taking care of ourselves can be so important. So I want to sort of start to conclude here, talking about some of our take-home tips. One thing that's important is making time daily for yourself, like I was saying. So starting small. So again, 5 minutes a day would be a great way to start. Self-care doesn't need to cost money. So, of course, it's lovely to, be able to go to the movies or to make time to go to the spa or make time to go to that gym class that you've wanted to go to. But sometimes we can't afford those things. And self-care does not need to cost money. We can do it on our own. We can look up YouTube videos. And one of the benefits of having this digital age is being able to, look at things on the internet that are for free. Self-care improves your ability to parent, and it helps you feel more, by making yourself less stressed, it helps you be more effective as a parent. And I think that that's just a really important thing to remember, because the more stressed we are, the harder it is to get things done that we want to do. Again, you can engage in self-care alone or with your kids. So again, kids are at school during the day, or if they are in school at that time, being able to take time alone to care for yourself, or when your kids are around, being able to turn those activities into things that you enjoy too. So be it that you're going to the library with your kids and having that as an opportunity, or, making play dates with other parents who you enjoy spending time with, and having that as an option as well. And then my final tip is do what works. I think, we can't do these things perfectly. There's no perfect parent. There's always going to be stress as in parenting. And so doing what works is going to help you feel more confident. So if it's that I can only do 1 minute of self-care a day, I think that's enough. I think being able to say I'm making this effort for myself is going to help change your mindset, help you feel more positive, and in tune. So I just want to provide a couple of resources. Again, as much as there's a love-hate relationship with the technology, but again, there are a lot of apps to help with some of this self-care and mindfulness. So Headspace has meditations, we have relaxed melodies, so those are sounds, and that can help you fall asleep if you're, working on some of the sleep for your self-care. Anti-stress quotes, so looking at those to help you feel, good, so you can save your favorite quotes and share them with others. Calm is another meditation app that helps, and the virtual hope box I think is a great toolbox with coping strategies. You can put pictures in there to sort of remind yourself of things that make you feel good, guided breathing, guided meditation, calming quotes, etc. So I want to just leave a couple of minutes for questions. Here's my contact information.
All right, we are back. So I cut that short a little bit just because she was going on. Suzanne, you're on mute with questions. So that's where we want to come in to really bring this more about parenting through adoption and what that means for us around that. So j'ai fini le vidéo parce que là, on embarque dans les questions. Puis ce qu'on voulait faire, c'est Suzanne et moi, on voulait avoir une petite discussion alentour de comment est-ce que ça démontre pour nous dans la communauté d'adoption. Puis, si vous avez des questions, si vous êtes encore là, puis vous regardez, posez-nous vos questions. Ça nous ferait plaisir de vous répondre. So yeah, how did you find this video, Suzanne?
Well, I really liked that it covered so much. And then there was a few little things here and there that sort of stuck out. Was the one around, I loved how she talked about families who, especially families who have kids who, have special needs.
Yes.
It's the idea of being a superhero, but you don't have a cape. And I do think we do that a lot, especially, it's like, oh, it's so amazing what you've done. You've been, people will expect a lot of people who have given a lot. So it's like, that idea of being, that pressure to be a superhero, which we can't possibly do without compromising something, right?
Exactly. And so often it's us compromising ourselves as parents. So not only women, but men too, but, like compromising that. So often we lose ourselves, through parenting because all of a sudden our needs are on the back burner, which is totally normal. It happens to all of us. And I think there's a part of parenting where that becomes, normal, but we don't want to normalize it for too long. right? Especially, if we are parenting children with, like she mentioned, disabilities or different challengings. Well, it brings on that extra challenge with a lot of our families that we support through the network are living through right now.
And I really liked, I mean, all of the content was great. The part on the end around the barriers, and probably when you're really stressed, and I know people I know who sometimes are just so overwhelmed that even when you say, okay, well, think about what about, then they go, well, no, I can't because of this. And then you say, well, what about that? I can't because of that. Like we create, like if you find yourself creating barriers, stop and think, okay, why am I, what is going to work for me? So it's that moment, like trying to shift towards, if you're not already kind of on this sort of way of thinking about what are some ways I can shift my point of view so that I'm seeing around the barriers as opposed to just seeing barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we are going to have barriers, and we all have barriers. And especially around parenting, we have barriers because it's so easy to fall into the traps of, I don't have time, and it's just too demanding, and there's just too much responsibility and too much going on. Plus I work, plus I this, plus I that, we are mindful and very, very, we know that this is the reality. And like Suzanne mentions, is how can we first and foremost just recognize that we do have needs and our needs are not completely being met. So how can we integrate that too? Because we are so good at taking care of everybody else. And then when it comes to us, not everyone, this is not a generalization. This is just something we've noticed along the way, that how can we make sure to get on that list?
Yeah.
Get on that list that we have all these priorities, but where, so the first question would just be, where are you on your list of priority?
Yeah. And feel good about that. And know that that's good to be on the list, because our society has sends us lots of mixed messages. And so how do we get to a point where this is good for me? I need to do this and feel worthy of that.
Absolutely. And that's definitely a work in progress, which I call a love in progress.
Yes.
Stephanie, and that's a bit of the idea I wanted to bring forth to today and throughout the whole week, is that this is not just something, okay, you click into, and I'm sure you've been thinking and hearing about self-care for a long time. This is nothing new. And it's not just this idea, okay, well, I need to take care of myself, and then bang, magically you have it all figured out. This is a practice.
Yes.
This is always the message I want to stress so much, is that it's a practice, and it's something that you wake up every day and you choose to put yourself on that list. It's a choice, and it's your responsibility to put yourself on that list. And it's this idea of practice. So it's every single day you choose yourself throughout everything else you have to do. You choose yourself as well. And it's this idea of, like, because you are making yourself a priority in some sort of, time and space during your week or your day, is not this idea that you have to stop taking care of everybody else. One doesn't have to come to the detriment of the other, but we've become the detriment to the other, and that's where you want to shift your perspective on how can you schedule 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes a day for yourself.
One of the things that you're sort of sparking in me too is that I think, especially our culture, we kind of think in terms of either or. It's either my child or me. And of course, that's a pretty hard choice, right? You're going to choose your child as a loving, caring parent, but it's not either or, it's and. So the idea of doing those things, finding ways to look after me, is for it's not an either or. It's integrating it into the way you look at your week, the way you spend your time, and sometimes it is letting your child have some time apart from you. That's not unhealthy for a child, right? So sometimes when we think we're doing things for our kids, we're actually limiting our kids, right? So this idea of helping and always being the one to rescue and be the superhero sometimes doesn't allow for those other people to step in and be their full potential too. So I think it's not an either or. And making ourselves a priority is inclusive. It's not like at the expense of anyone else. It's to the benefit of everyone else. Right?
Absolutely. And Patricia brings up a good point. And this is where I want to encourage you this week as we talk about self-care, is to schedule time for yourself. So it's the actual action task, and you take your week and you look into where can I fit me time, and you actually block it out, whether it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever you think you can afford in your week and your days. And this was a practice of mine when I first came out of, being the one, doing everything, which so often we put that on ourselves, but that's a whole other subject. Well, I mean, it's integrated in it, but it was the actual action task of taking the time and booking it out. So Patricia says, I schedule so many things, but you're right. Somehow I never make the schedule to add in the me time. And that's what we want to encourage you to do, even if that's 5 minutes a day. Yeah, and she also says, I love that. It's for me and my child. So it's not, like Suzanne was mentioning, it's not this idea of either or, but it's and. So thank you, Patricia, for your comment. Oui, donc on veut juste vous encourager à vraiment prendre le temps, puis de regarder à votre horaire, puis vraiment faire l'action de, même si c'est 5 minutes ou si tu as une demi-heure, de vraiment le mettre prendre le temps de regarder à ton horaire, puis le mettre, puis de dire, c'est du temps pour moi. Me time, so important. Any other takeaways, Suzanne, that you felt was important around the pillars of self-care?
I really liked, and I think this, kind of reinforces the point we're just making, is labeling things as self-care.
Yeah.
Like there's a bunch of stuff we do that we say, oh, I'm going to do something that I want to do. And like calling it self-care in itself affects how well you feel.
Absolutely.
So I think that doesn't take any extra time. It's like everything that you're doing already. Like I know, on Monday you and Kim did a Facebook Live and she talked about, making herself a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like lots of times we make ourselves a cup of tea or coffee or whatever, but to actually say, I am doing this for me and create a ritual and thought around it.
Yeah.
So what you do may not have to change that much. I love that, because that seemed like a quick, super efficient way to get the benefit.
Absolutely. And you bring up this huge component around self-care that I work a lot with participants and clients, and my other job is around this ritual, but you also have to have intent. And it's this idea of your intention around things. So if it is the tea ritual or the coffee ritual, you already have planned. So it's planned, it's me time, and it's with intent. So you're actually going to mindfully and consciously prepare your coffee, even the preparation of it, the whole thing becomes your ritual, and it's really the intent behind it. So it's this idea of practicing this intent, mindfulness intent. So that's a great point.
Right.
Donc, les choses avec intention. Puis comme Suzanne mentionne, ça n'a pas besoin de changer toute ta vie, mais même faire ton café le matin, est-ce que tu le fais avec intention, que c'est quelque chose que tu prends soin de toi? Si c'est le 5 minutes, même d'aller faire ton café, de le prendre, puis de le boire, puis c'est vraiment ton temps. So I like that. Intent and rituals are very, very important around really, the structure around your self-care, I suppose, if we want to see it that way.
Yeah. So why did you pick this, or what step jumps out for you, Brandi?
So what jumps out for me are two things is, well, there's a lot of things, but number one is the fact of choosing yourself. And she said it throughout the video, and it's that choice. It's that it brings back to that responsibility. And it's almost like, I feel it's like kind of touchy when we start saying it's your responsibility, because it can bring on a lot of guilt. I know it did for me. That's why I'm mentioning that.
Okay.
Once I started realizing, I know we all know this, right? But once we really start being conscious about it's your responsibility, that can bring up a lot of guilt, because we're like, oh, we haven't been, we're not being good moms then. We haven't been taking care of ourselves good. You know, it's just another thing that people or society puts pressure on us to be like, take care of yourself, and you're not doing good. So this was kind of like my internal chatter. So that sticks out for me around responsibility. And then when realizing that, you know, it is responsibility, because the way I see, or, you know, it's your belief. You got to look at your beliefs and what you kind of believe being a good parent is, and I don't even like to label a good parent like that. It's just around the way you parent, or the way you handle stress, or the way you regulate yourself, or you show up for your kid who needs to help with regulation. Is this idea of like, you know, can you be easy on yourself and choose you, and kind of let the guilt come up if it comes up. But how are you going to, you know, judge yourself through that? And this idea of any shift starts with, can you not judge yourself for judging yourself? You know what I mean? Because we judge ourselves all the time. So can we just not judge ourselves for judging ourselves? So allow ourselves to judge ourselves. How are we going to move forward with choosing ourselves? And so for me, it's about responsibility, about choice. So I wake up every morning and I make that choice. I make a choice to make sure I'm there. And the other thing that popped up for me throughout the video was the component of intellectual needs. And how so often for adults, when we get caught up into parenting with children, you know, we can feel very depleted very fast, because somehow we are not feeling fulfilled in other areas. And maybe you have a job that is super fulfilling intellectually in this, that's awesome. But for a lot of parents, maybe if you're a stay-home parent, or, you know, you're off right now, or, you know, you're homeschooling or whatever, the fact that you need time to stimulate yourself intellectually to feel like you're a part of something was that came up for me, as to where for myself, when my kids were babies, I felt that was something missing inside of me, where my dreams and my, you know, my desires were kind of on the back burner. Right. And it's just like, is there a way you can fit in a little bit of intellectual time for yourself to, you know, working on something that you're passionate about, or that brings you joy, or that, you know, that can look like different things for many people. But
you know what, I was thinking about that too, when she was talking about the, you know, and maybe this is how my brain works and what I find interesting and like intellectually stimulating. When she talked about, you know, the library story where, you know, go to the children's section for your kids, and then maybe you could go to another section for you. And I was thinking, you know, children's literature is very intellectually interesting. Like you can, some of those things that, you know, I think our society undervalues, maybe, there's ways to look at them. Now, this is my own, you know, way of looking at the world, right? There's a lot of intellectual stimulation from ordinary things that we, you know, so it's, you know, that's part of my trick, I think, for finding things interesting. But, you know, everybody finds, I think part of this, from what, you know, hearing and listening, and it's kind of finding that key that's going to turn things for you. Like, what is it that's going to, that it's like, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you know, you're either going to get to a crisis where it's going to all, you know, it's going to get so difficult, you're going to have to change, or you're going to realize, I'm getting to that point and I need some shifts in my life. so it's finding that turning, that point where it's like, okay.
Absolutely. And I think I mentioned to you this before, Suzanne, actually, before we were talking and jumping on live, is that especially to help and support the families that we support through adoption and through the network, is really tips and tricks on how do we bring that about. And first and foremost, do you have a conversation with your partner about that you are in need of self-care, and she or he doing for self-care, and what are because self-care will look totally different for people, and so this idea of bringing up that conversation around, here are my needs, and this is so number one, we got to know what our needs are. So it's a whole process, right? So we don't want this to be super overwhelming, so I'm going to guide you through some stuff tomorrow on the live, but can you have a conversation with your whole family, with your partner, and with your kids even? Because I was telling Suzanne too, like my kids are 2 and 4, and I've been emphasizing on my own self-care with them in their own words, where I can explain, like, mommy needs a recharge. She needs to plug her batteries in. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what we're going to do. And, whether that's me closing the door and going off on my own, or sending them off and my partner takes them and away they go. So it's this idea of self-care doesn't have to be something you do on your own. It's this community aspect, and use the network for that, because we are here to support you in that way, and to help you find ways to have those difficult conversations if they are difficult, or help you partner up with families that are going through the same thing as you, and you kind of have this chit chat around what works for me, what works for you, and kind of see how you can integrate it into your own everyday life throughout what you're going through. And we're going to have on Thursday night a support group around this, so please join us on Thursday night. I think it's at 7 or 7:30, but I'll go look and check the link, where we're going to take an hour and go through what it looks like, what self-care looks like in our own homes, and how we can help each other really determine, what our needs are and how we can make that happen, because there's so many blockages in the way, right?
I too, just to add to that too, I think that, when you're around people, I saw some, the wisdom of Facebook, a really neat Facebook meme about how if you're with a group of people who are committed to their personal growth, it's so life-giving. Like it's lovely to be around people who think in terms of growth, and so finding someone who's on your wavelength is really important. And it's probably that social need, but it's also will affect all those other components of wellness. And the network has people like that. So, in your life or through our network, finding people who think in those terms can really help you. Because I think we sometimes are in situations where it's like being the superhero, being that self-sacrificing woman, or being those messages we get as parents, and probably as women in particular, we want to counteract those because we have to be healthy, we have to be okay, and things you have to do to compromise to get by the world, but there's finding people who do that in a healthy way, and finding people who think in those terms is really important. So our network is a lovely way to find people like that.
Oui, ça fait que Suzanne a dit comment est-ce que c'est important de trouver le support que tu as besoin, puis d'être alentour des personnes qui sont prêtes à se mettre en priorité aussi. Fait que quand on est dans un groupe où on trouve notre groupe de sport, que les gens font toute la même chose, dans le sens qu'ils se choisissent, ils se mettent en priorité, puis c'est vraiment quelque chose qu'ils pratiquent. Ça peut nous aider aussi à embarquer. Puis ce que je veux dire, c'est que aussi, juste, c'est a little side note, que tout se fait beaucoup plus en anglais quand on converse après, dans ces lives ici. Je veux juste vous dire qu'on va faire un effort aussi pour vous faire des lives juste en français. Ça fait qu'on va ajouter ça, on va faire notre possible. Puis, I was just telling people too that I know I do realize our conversations stick a lot around English, and sometimes it's hard to translate on the fly, but I really do understand that it's a need in French. So I want to offer some lives that I'm going to offer some lives in French where it'll just be the discussion around, this in French. So please bear with us as we really, integrate the way we are coming online with everything and making sure that we offer, in both languages. So I was just side note there.
Excellent.
Yes. So I think that's, it was a good basic reminder, I think, and not to undervalue the fact that they are basic or something we know already. I think it's important to engrave that and continue to have those talks around repeat, and to know that that is super important. Donc, le fait que oui, c'est des choses que vous connaissez probablement déjà puis que vous avez déjà entendu, mais le fait que, we already know it, but why isn't it changing?
Yeah. And we have good days and bad days and ups and downs and more focus and less focus. And sometimes don't feel guilty about feeling guilty, and don't feel, we're not always going to be on the right wavelength, but, working towards it eventually.
Absolutely. So we hope this was helpful. On espère que ça a été quand même quelque chose qui vous apporte à réfléchir. We hope this brings some reflection upon what your life looks. And, we're not going to kid ourselves. As much as we want to make this, not overwhelming and not so much another thing on your to-do list, when we are really taking the responsibility and choosing ourselves, it does take a shift, and it takes a shift into our whole lives. And it is work in a way, it is, but it's that idea of finding the support through the work as well. And this is not something you have to do alone.
And the more challenging your life is, probably the more challenging it is to figure out a way to do that. But it's also the more important. It's more important to do. The more challenging your life. If your life had no challenges in it, you could just kind of get by. Where the more challenging parts of your lives, when, raising kids who've had lots of traumas, this is fundamental and really, 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 really important for you and your wellness, and for their wellness too.
It is. And I think I want to end with just saying too, that it does get better. The more you choose yourself, the more you choose to practice, the more you show up for yourself, it does get better. I know when I first started my whole, shift into self-care and to putting myself first and making myself a priority, I felt an immense guilt. Like, I remember the first times leaving and doing something on my own, and I felt a lot of guilt. So I had to move through that guilt and really allow myself to feel that guilt. And it does get better. So now I'm getting better at doing stuff and not feeling so guilty.
Yeah. And any shift, it feels uncomfortable.
It does.
So, yeah. No, thank you.
Keep going, everyone. Continuez votre beau travail. And I'm sure there's a lot out there of you that are watching, or if we're watching on the replay, that do have a really healthy, conscious way of being where you are taking care of yourself. And we want to hear from you.
Yes.
Because if you can share the way that you take care of yourself, it might help and inspire others to say, hey, I haven't thought about that part.
Yeah. And it's not bragging, it's sharing.
Yes, so sharing is caring, so share away. All right, so we're going to leave it at that today. On vous laisse avec ça aujourd'hui, puis on espère que ça a été du bon contenu pour vous. We hope that was good content for you. We will see you live tomorrow morning at 10, where we discuss a whole other, facade of self-care through empathy and compassion and boundaries. And we're going to discuss that tomorrow. And then, so tomorrow's Thursday, yes, and we have, like I mentioned, our support group tomorrow night. Donc, on a notre groupe de sport demain soir. And then Friday, we're offering a wrap-up of the week, Kim and I, where we're going to have another Q&A and a little discussion. And I think we're sharing a yoga or a meditation around self-care. So we'll do that on Friday. And check out next week is diversity in adoption. So there's a lot of great content that's coming your way next week. So be sure to check out our website and our Facebook pages for all the information. We wish you a good day and chat soon.
Thank you.
Right. I don't know how to stop the live. There we go.